I found myself in more recovery activities than actual doing activities. Acupuncture, chiropractor was I was doing all of the things to try to let me do the activities. One day I just said, fuck it. And I started on the GLP-1. And I was a little nervous because I hear about people losing muscle mass and everything. And that was the furthest thing that I wanted to do. But the combination of taking the GLP-1 and doing the weight training and doing the protein and the creatine allowed me to get to a body composition that was very amenable to performing the activities that I wanted to perform.
I felt like I was experiencing what it was like to be a man for a change. You're told oh, cut calories and work out and you will lose half a pound a week. That never, ever, ever actually worked for me. And then all of a sudden I do that and I'm like, wow, it actually worked.
Well, hello, Meg.
Hello, Amy. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you as well. So today we are going to revisit our health journeys. We visited our health journeys about a year ago.
Oh my goodness,
episode 14. And I think we've just kind of skyrocketed into even greater health since then. But before we get into all of that, Meg, there have been some recent announcements that I wanted to acknowledge. And the first is that you were appointed to the board at Textio. Congratulations.
Thank you. What a great team. I'm so delighted. So I think most people know Kieran was on our show. She's one of the founders of Textio. So I've been a fan of Textio forever. The current CEO, Colleen Gallagher, has just been so generous and invited me in. And we've had a really good working relationship for the past couple months. And so getting to be part of this board is fun. They're doing some pretty cool and innovative product stuff, which obviously always inspires me. And I just believe that obviously supporting female CEOs and innovation in our space and innovation anchored on humans is a really fun place to be. So what an honor.
Fantastic. So you're on the board of Textio and Papaya.
Yes. And NovaWorks.
And NovaWorks. And
Yes.
But I was going to mention Papaya. We will be having the CEO, Aina, on our show next week.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Gosh, time is flying. I felt like that was going to be a ways away, and now we are away.
I know. So wonderful. And then I'll obviously have to get Kelly
That's right.
on the show as well. So
That's right.
Fantastic. Yes. Obviously, you are making all of the moves in HR tech these days. You're involved in every aspect of HR tech, Meg. So it is no surprise at all that you were named one of the top HR tech 100 influencers. So congratulations to that. I was a little surprised that I got included as well, but I will take it. So yay for the Meg and Amy show.
Yay for the Meg and Amy show. Well, first off, I adore that group. I adore the people that are on that list and the people that should have been on that list. It's a great community, but I especially adore it when I get to bookend with Amy Wilson because Bear comes at the top of the list and Wilson comes at the bottom of the list. That just brings me so much joy. So yay for the Meg and Amy show. Yay for the community of HR technologists and practitioners and leaders and people who care about making work better. It's a really important moment, and I'm really honored and inspired to be part of that team.
It's really interesting. I was reflecting a bit about the community, and there's a lot of people in the influencer list that are from our PeopleSoft days, right? And we kind of talked a little bit about the concept of the PeopleSoft mafia versus the PayPal mafia. And to extend that even just to the entire HR tech community, there's really just such a big contrast for me, especially when I think about a recent book I read, Meg, which you've read as well, which is How to Rule the World by a recent Stanford grad, kind of unpacking what's going on with the Stanford inside Stanford. And it's a little bit dystopian, to be quite honest, and a little scary just in terms of the money that's pouring into teenagers building companies, the underlying corruption that comes about. And anyway, I was really thinking about how the HR tech group is so contrasting to that. William Tincup had a really nice piece about how everyone who's talking about the list is appreciating each other and the community and the broader power of the group rather than any sort of individual ego.
Yeah, I even felt that a little bit. We were both at the Acadian Summit in San Diego recently, which was also a great community of people in the HR tech space. And it was very clear to me that there's just an above average group of intellect there, but in addition, above average heart-centered focus. The thing that is so inspiring to me. I have always been of the belief that our mission, our reason is to improve the world of work. And if you believe that that's your purpose in being part of the HR technology community, then you approach the community differently, especially people that you might see as natural competitors, because at the end of the day, it's really about serving customers. And sure, every one of these businesses is trying to do the best to grow their business. But I believe that the addressable problem is bigger than the individual companies. And therefore, I think it is great to have a network and a community that spans multiple of these companies, even ones that are natural competitors. And so it was really fun at that Acadian Summit to also be in a room where people that are typically competing with each other on the product side are also coming together to ask the question of what does work need to be in the future and where is technology going to be able to help. And so I think, Amy, like it's a big part of why we do this show is to really imagine how work should exist in the future and to do that in a way that creates opportunity and creates ability for flourishing for the humans in our care. When you contrast that to the Stanford expose, I worry a little bit that we used to have a whole lot of innovation talking about making the world a better place. And we've somehow seemed to have shifted to innovation to make founders wealthy. That doesn't work for me. So I'm not against people becoming wealthy, obviously, but I do believe that our missions need to be grounded in something that is a little more purposeful. So I hope that this is an example that shines past just the HR tech community.
Speaking of flourishing, Meg, I think that we've had several comments over the last few months that leaving a big job sure looks good on us.
Yes.
And so this is very true. So we were already doing pretty well a year ago with our focus on protein and creatine and weightlifting and all of the things. But another year has passed and we have some more achievements to share with you all. Should we do just maybe like a little bit of a recap of where we were a year ago?
Sure.
Yeah. So you want to share?
You want me first?
Sure. Yeah.
A year ago, I think I ended our episode reflecting that I had made a big mental shift in how I thought of myself in the context of fitness. I had grown up with a very diet culture upbringing, that it was about how you looked, it was about being thin, and just a whole lot of emphasis that you worked out so that you could eat something or so that you were doing penance for something, that kind of a mindset. And so I felt like when we ended the first year, the big shift for me had been really in my relationship with fitness. Now, I've always taken fitness very seriously. Obviously, I've had moments where I could be more diligent than others, but it has always been something that's been part of me. But I've never really thought of myself as someone who was fit. I thought of myself as someone who worked out. And at the end of the first year, I really had a pretty significant shift where I was perceiving myself as someone who was fit, who believed working out was part of who I was, not something I was responsible to do. And that was a pretty big shift for me. And I was feeling really good about that. But if you'll remember, I had been making progress on body comp generally, adding muscle mass, reducing body fat, but it was very slow and very painful. And I was actually gaining weight or struggling to maintain weight. You had a breakthrough, and I was definitely not. So we had talked about the whole GLP thing, and I said, I may join you. And so that was where I was a year ago. So where about you?
Okay. Well, so as Meg mentioned, I had gotten really impatient with the slow improvement. It was amazing to have all of this extra time to do the exercise and activities that I really love. Like, I think everyone knows I love running, but every time I would try to run a little further or a little faster or what have you, I'd find myself in with knee pain or something that would cause me to have to step way back. And that was very frustrating. I found myself in more recovery activities than actual doing activities like acupuncture, chiropractor, I was doing like all of the things to try to let me do the activities. And so one day I just said, fuck it. And I started on the GLP-1. And I was a little nervous because, you hear about people losing muscle mass and everything. And that was the furthest thing that I wanted to do. But honestly, the combination of taking the GLP-1 and doing the weight training and doing the protein and the creatine really allowed me to get to a body composition that was very amenable to performing the activities that I wanted to perform. And so a little over a year ago, I ran in a 12K, and that was just an achievement of itself. And in that 12K, I ran 10-minute and 48-second miles, to be exact. And I was very happy with that. I wasn't like in excruciating pain afterward. Since then, over the last year, just continuing to focus on that weight training, being able to increase my conditioning because, suddenly I was able to keep pushing and pushing without having all of the recovery needs and so on. And so I did the same 12K, this one, Big Sur, a couple months ago. And for that one, same race, 9-minute and 15-second miles.
Excellent.
So yeah, that was incredible.
And did you feel like when you finished, you felt better than the time before, or about the same, or what's the...
About the same. Obviously I was more proud of myself, I guess. I think the prior year I left some energy on the table. Like I kind of took it easy so that to make sure that I wasn't going to hurt myself, that I was going to finish. I didn't really know what to expect. Like I felt really good after it. And then this one, I just was like so jazzed. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that I finished it in 69 minutes. I was just like, wow.
It's
And
crazy.
so I have read a little bit that there it's possible that GLP-1, in addition to just the weight loss, which obviously helps with like joints and all that kind of stuff, there may actually be another benefit, which is to osteoarthritis just
Mhm.
on its
The
own.
anti-inflammation, yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, it's not super clear. It's really hard to, like, separate the 2, but that makes a lot of sense to me because, like, my excruciating knee pain that I had before is just completely gone. It's non-existent. The other achievement that I had, Meg, was that I can stand up without using my hands or knees.
From the
Only
floor or
from the
from a
floor,
chair?
from the no,
From the floor.
from the floor. So,
Nice.
yeah, I mean, I hadn't tried it in my younger years. It was, like, something that I tried, like, 2 years ago for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, there's no way." Now, I can do it with the crisscross applesauce way. The real way you're supposed to do it is, what, not crisscross applesauce, but I consider the crisscross applesauce a big achievement.
Oh, I do too, yeah. I think I can only do that with, like, a yoga block. Like, I don't think I can go all the way from the floor.
Yeah, but even so, that's really good. So the other thing too is that, and people have asked me this is, okay, now that you've done GLP-1 and you achieved what you wanted to achieve, are you going to go off of it? Because I think, when we take things that are dietary in the past, like it wasn't something that was sustainable. A lot of the time it was like some sort of like speed or something like it was gonna like affect your heart and stuff like that. And so everyone's like, oh, like you're gonna gain so much weight when you go off of it. So you have to go off of it. Maybe you shouldn't even ever use it. Well, I am continuing to use it, but I'm using what I would consider a microdose. And I do believe that it is good. Like it's a good thing to do. Really evens out my metabolism. I'm believing that it's like helping my joint pain, all of these things that I think are long term. And of course, we won't really know for another like 10 years whether this was the right decision or not. But for me, it is. And so instead of taking it weekly, I'm taking a small dose like every 10 days.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So on my side, I decided to try the GLP-1. I did the tirzepatide, not the semaglutide, mostly because I was just terrified of losing muscle mass, and it had better numbers for that. I started in September, and by the end of the year, I was just amazed at, I mean, the weight loss is amazing. I have done lots of things to lose weight in my time, and having spent the 2 years prior working really hard and only managing to gain weight, it was shocking to me that all of the behaviors that I had been building that were good health behaviors were actually working for weight reduction as well, which was just the crazy part. I felt like I was experiencing what it was like to be a man for a change, where you're told like, oh, cut calories and work out and you will lose half a pound a week or whatever. That never, ever, ever actually worked for me. And then all of a sudden I do that and I'm like, wow, it actually worked. Similar to you, my belief about starting and stopping changed dramatically once I was on the GLP-1, where I was like, I never want to stop this, and not for the weight loss, but certainly for the way I feel. So I attribute it to the inflammation, but there's just a significant reduction of not just pain, but like a bunch of very subtle symptoms that on net cause me to feel so much better. And of course, it's hard to know, is it the reduction of visceral fat? Is it the improvement of my organs? Or is it the long-term benefits of the fitness plus the reduction? Like, it's hard to know, but I will tell you it is noticeable, and it is materially good for my health. I can tell that with confidence. And so I have a totally different point of view. Now, part of my point of view is also informed by the fact that within my family, we lean towards high cholesterol. The reality of a statin being in my future was something that was out there anyway. And a statin you have to take all the time. And so to have something that not only helps with my sort of overall cholesterol, but also with the rest of my well-being, I feel like it's a much better trade than considering being on a statin for life. I was really glad that I had already developed a strong habit of tracking all of my body comp elements. So I weekly was doing an in-body scan where I would get muscle mass and body fat, not just weight, and started taking measurements and all of that. So I had a really great set of data of not just all of the workouts that I had been doing, but also essentially the behaviors. Early on, I was tracking my protein just to make sure that I wasn't neglecting it. And then after a while, I felt like, okay, I understand what my habits are and how to make sure I get enough protein and get enough nutrients and all of that. It was a big benefit for me with starting the GLP-1 because I felt like I was really clear on my habits before jumping on with the medication. So all in all, I'm happy. Would I have done it in a different order? I've since read the book Weightless by Dr. Salis Whalen, and she specifically says start with the GLP and add the other things, as opposed to getting hung up about that.
What other things do you mean?
For people who are struggling on where to start, like, do they go to the gym? Do they go on a diet? Do they do this, do this, do this? Her point of view is you start with the GLP-1 and you focus on building your workout habits versus I spent a year and a half building my workout habits, trying to see if that would work and then start the GLP-1. I think her advice is specifically for people who are in the obese or significantly overweight category. But one of the things that I learned along the way, and I'm so glad I didn't learn this right away. So anybody who's not on this journey yet or concerned about this, maybe plug your ears. What I learned that I didn't know was if you have a body fat mass of over 32%, you're considered obese no matter what your weight is. That was shocking to me. And I was like, oh, thank God I figured that out after I was already making progress on that number. And I might have had myself a full heart failure. So it's been an interesting journey and one that I have, unlike you, maybe I feel proud of myself every little thing that I achieve or every little milestone that I overcome. So it's also brought me a lot of joy.
I don't know if I told you this, Meg, but so my body fat has gone from 30 something percent, over 30, in that category that you were mentioning, to less than 20% the last.
My word.
Yeah.
See, you are killing it. Yeah. I would say I still have some room to improve on the body fat percent.
So the other thing that people get hung up on a little bit is the cost, which makes sense. Like, this is so expensive. How can you do this for life? So I did want to share, how I'm actually getting the GLP-1 because I think it's important for people to know. So I'm using an online source, Remedy Meds. It is totally legal and all the stuff. They have, doctors that talk to you and everything. You do have to pay out of pocket, but it's $299 a month, which can sound a little steep, but when you consider that against like all of the other things that I was doing and could, especially like around recovery, like it's really not that much, right? I'm not taking a whole bunch of other like vitamins and supplements. Like I have some supplements, but I've definitely scaled back and I don't have to go to acupuncture or the chiropractor every week anymore. So I feel like $299 a month for what I would consider a magical elixir is pretty good. So anyway, is that the end of our infomercial?
So very early on in the AI days, I had created a custom GPT that was giving me health advice. So I was obviously checking the sources and all of that, but it was more about asking questions. Which supplements can I quit doing because of the cost, right? It is a expensive journey of all of the things that they will sell you to try to feel better, especially in perimenopause and menopause. And so once we started our vibe coding journey and I started my open brain, I decided to take all of the tracking that I was doing for all of my fitness and all of my health goals, which I had been doing over several years. I fed that all into open brain and I asked Claude to help me build dashboards that showed me my progress over the period of time, how I had been achieving my goals, what my targets were, and specifically how I was consistently showing up with my exercise goals. So I have a goal for how many minutes a day on average I wanted to exercise. I also have a goal on how many days of the month that I want to work out. Because I had been tracking this for so long with the help of Apple Watch, I was able to really build something that was very motivating for me to see my long-term progress. Because those of you that know me know I like long-term goals that are hard, that you make progress on incrementally over time. The medal that I give myself is less about a single achievement, and it's more about have I showed up consistently and do I have the receipts? And I'm sort of happy to say that over 2 years straight, I've worked out average, not necessarily every day, but worked out over 50 minutes a day average for 2 years straight. So I feel pretty good about that.
And I think another thing to mention in terms of like the goals and the transparency, both like the triumphs and the setbacks, is that we share these with each other and then also with our good friends Jen Morrow and Jill Popelka, be able to share secrets and recommendations. You know, Jen gave us the tip on perfect amino, which we talked about last year as well. And I mean, gosh, that stuff is a lifesaver in terms of making sure you get enough protein even when you're not hungry. It's interesting how much easier it is to fit all of this stuff in when you don't have a big job. And then it's kind of nice when you're between big jobs. Karen Snyder recently did a data story about executives moving jobs, and she found that like executives generally have a longer period of time between jobs than the non-executives. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you have the money, the means to do that. But I think it also is probably very health related. You're just like so exhausted and unhealthy that you need that time in between to get back to health before you like jump back into the water again. I think there's just a universal truth to that, but it also is kind of depressing. So I just was wondering, what have we learned? Just watching Jen, for example, she definitely struggles a lot more than we do because she is so busy. Especially the travel is the worst part. But gosh, she does so well in terms of really making sure she sets the time to do what she needs to do. But it's hard. It's really hard.
I think figuring out what your body needs and what you need, no matter where you are in the cycle of work, does really matter. And then being generous with yourself as far as thinking about the kindness that you would offer to someone else and making sure you offer that to yourself. One of the things about having a community that our trust council that we can share vulnerable moments with and achievements. Simon Sinek says that you can tell the people that are your real friends, not because of them being there for you when things are bad, but that they're really anxious to celebrate you when things are good. That's how you can tell the level of closeness of the relationship. And so I think first and foremost, making sure you hold tight to yourself the people that are helpful to you, not only to your health journey, but to your just like overall well-being and thriving journey. Take that very seriously, because I think the key to sustaining a health journey really is a lot about the community. And then being realistic and kind to yourself about what is and isn't a reasonable goal. I think sometimes we get caught up in these like super big, lofty goals versus allowing ourselves to have more pragmatic goals that fit with our lifestyle. You have to know yourself a little bit and get a little bit more individualized about what is the right kind of goal to set for yourself. And so for you, Amy, it was running. For me, I'm a run only when chased person. So I started with dance because that's my happy place, and then worked out from there, because once you are feeling good, you can take on more. And then the other thing I think we have to recognize, Amy, is that sure, not having a big job right now has a lot to do with it. But I would also say the fact that our children are thriving on their own, the amount of time and energy you can focus on yourself versus focusing on others is a gift as well. And so that's not true for everyone. And that's not necessarily the reality for everyone where they are in their life journey, starting with what are my priorities? What does thriving look like and feel like for me? Who do I need to be around me that is going to support me and my overall well-being and health? And how do I tap into that energy, both as somebody that hopefully gives to others with the energy, but also someone that can benefit from others that maybe can help sustain you when things are hard. So just all comes back to community and individualizing for yourself. What does a thriving mean? What is a good life of thriving require for you? But the answer isn't the same for everyone.
Yeah, and this brings me to a composite leadership corner question, which is that I'm kind of getting from a bunch of people that are maybe feeling a little burnt out or are having health concern. And that is, how much should I care? What should I care about?
Such a good question. And I think this really does get to number one. I think it's super important not to decide that you care on what people are feeding you or what people are pushing your way. Lori Rudiman said it so great. Most coaching is projection, right? So the assertion that you or I would know what someone else should care about is missing the entire point. What I think we can model and show is a little bit around what would be the thought process that we would use to decide what do we care about. And this requires spending some time recognizing and valuing your own goals and aspirations. I would start there. What does thriving mean for you? What kinds of things build energy for you? And how do you want to think about achievement and progress and success? And to sit with that without judgment, to not assume that your goals and aspirations need to be what other people's are, but to really be honest with yourself and willing to let yourself be who you truly are, as opposed to trying to be someone else. And once you have that, then that answers the question of how much do you care? Because if your way that you want to show up in the world requires certain things for your family, certain things for yourself or whatever, well, then you care. But if it doesn't, then you don't. Getting away from a comparative definition of success and into an individualized definition of success, I think is really where you have to go to be able to honestly answer that question, how much should I care? So how do you decide what you care about, Amy?
I'm kind of putting this in the frame of how much should I care about my job? How much should I care about my work? It feels very much like the more I care about my job, the less I am able to care about myself. And I don't know if that's really true, but like I feel like that is a hole that people find themselves in a bit, right? Is like, okay, I'm going to care about my job right now. And so I can't care about myself. I'll care about myself after this job is done or something. You know what I mean? Maybe this is like the new version of work-life balance or something.
Yeah.
I do think that it gets back to many aspects. So the first is that, and so I'm just going to project my own philosophies here. You need to care about your work and the quality of your work. But more important, I think, is caring about the people that you're working with, that you're working for, that you're caring for, that you're keeping those relationships forevermore. And I just don't think that there's as much loyalty in a workplace as there once was, but there certainly can be plenty of loyalty with people. And so that's kind of how I tend to think about it. And when you start to put it in those terms, you can start to think about like how the people around you who also care about you, that you care for and they care for you, they care about you taking care of yourself. And that it's actually in their best interest and in your best interest for them that you take care of yourself. It's a little bit of a different sort of thing. So people can be just like running, like I gotta work, I gotta do all these things, I gotta achieve, I gotta succeed. And that's what's going to be most important for the company, for the people around me. But actually, if you are in your best shape, your best self, your best sense, that's actually going to be so much more important to the people around you. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of a Pollyanna view.
Well, I love that. So in the context of how much should I care about work and the trade-offs of work, I find myself having a bit of an allergic reaction to the framing, which is actually an indicator for me. There's like something there. And I think my challenge to that is I don't like the agency of that. I don't like the fact that I'm ceding agency to I can only do work or take care of myself. So it's a little bit different take on your point, which is you're a much nicer person. So like Amy's point for sure. But Meg's point is this. I care too much for sure. Everybody that knows me knows this. So this is like, take this with a grain of salt. But for me, my identity is all of it. It is my work. It is who I am. It is my heart. It is my energy system. It is my relationships. That's all part of me. And I don't do great work because I think that the company is going to value me for life or give me a watch at the end of my retirement or any of those things. I recognize that as a worker, the organization that you work with, they're looking to achieve one thing and they're paying me to participate in their goals. And so I'm not looking for loyalty necessarily or expecting it from any place that I work. But I care about my work because it is who I am. And so if I let myself do bad work or let people down or do work that I'm not proud of, that's the same as any other thing in my life. It's part of my character and it's part of my self-identity. And so it is impossible for me to separate how much do I care about my work product versus how much do I care about my health. And I do think that this is why prioritization, at least for me, has to matter across, because when you're in big executive jobs, you're not able to do every single thing that needs to be done. You have to make choices and trade-offs all the time. And so what I'm not willing to trade off is when I decide something is important, I'm not willing to trade off the fact that I think I made a good decision. And I'm not willing to trade off that I even prioritized properly between how much I did of work versus how much I did for my family versus how much I did for my health or whatever. That's my agency. That's something that I don't outsource to someone else's prioritization. And so the answer is I care a heck of a lot, But I still recognize in caring, I'm not going to be able to do everything. And so it is my job to figure out how to prioritize and what to not let down. And I agree with you, Amy, to the top of my list is a lot about the people. And this has come over the course of my life. At the early in my career, I don't think I had this balance properly aligned. But where I am on my journey now, I recognize that that prioritizing the people in my care and helping to bring the entire organization to a place of pride in their work is a big part of my responsibility. I see things now in a very different way than I did early in my career. I see everything as an energy system. I see things as adding or subtracting energy. And I see that taking care of my health is a key contributor to how much energy I have. And for me, the number one thing in that is sleep, actually. It's not working out or body fat or, pant size or any of those things. It is absolutely how much sleep do I get, because I know that if I'm not cognitively fit, everything else falls apart for me. And so that's another thing that I have seen with the GLP-1 journey, because in the past I have had to trade cognitive fitness for calorie consumption because I burn a lot of glucose somehow in whatever I do. And in the past, when I would be trying to lose weight, I would do a lot of fasting type activities, and it would impact my cognition in a way that created a lot of discomfort in me. And so to not have to make that trade-off is a really big deal for me now. And I think that, again, I see everything not about, do I care about this or do I care about that? I see it as energy systems and prioritization. And everything else falls within that for me now.
I love that. All right. So before we wrap up, Meg, I wanted to ask you about one of the articles you mentioned in your recent newsletter. So newsletter 21. And that was that 86% of new jobs are going to women. And I found that very surprising, especially considering all of there just seems to be a lot of talk of that women are losing jobs more. And so I'm not sure if that was taken into consideration anyway, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about what that article said and what you thought.
Yeah. So it was surprising to me as well, because I felt exactly as you did. We'd heard that there was a lot of job loss. I don't know if you remember, Alex Karp was the CEO of Palantir was saying, that job loss will all be for women, and the job growth will be for the neurodivergent, which is okay, that's good and bad all at the same time. So I was very, very surprised to see that data. What it was suggesting was that the focus of cost reduction has created a net reduction of jobs overall. The only jobs that are growing are healthcare and a few other things. And caregiving type jobs fall on women more. And therefore, women have been the receiver of jobs, the inverse of goodness in a good statistic, in the sense that wage stagnation is still an issue and growth is only happening in jobs that are not high-paying jobs. And that is why they're leaning towards women. I think it isn't a sustainable metric by any definition, but I do think there is an important sub-question in the entire topic of caregiving. Jasmine Bank has talked about this in the past, about the default assumption of caregiving falling on women is not sustainable with our demographics going forward as the population ages and jobs shift in their makeup. And so, yes, I included it because it was surprising to me, but I don't know that it is net good.
Yeah, I figured not.
Yay!
So one other thing, I was listening to last week's 20 VC, and I felt like they were really talking about your theory, everything's back to EDS theory. Did you notice that?
I'm trying to remember if I noticed
Yeah, I mean,
that.
obviously it was many days ago, but I just was listening to it this morning. But they were talking about forward deploy engineers and like going back to IBM and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that is an example of people starting to catch on to Meg's theories a little bit earlier.
That's true. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, does that mean I'm slowing up or the world's getting faster? Or
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. We had the whole conversation about everybody needs to do more tokens, and then, oh my God, token maxing is a problem. But Andreessen just posted a thing about the 100x tokens is the new 10x engineer, and that essentially the humans are cheaper now. So like we've literally like done the entire arc in less than a year, and I'm like, where does this take us? Are we just whiplashing ourselves for fun, or are we all losing our minds in this world? So to that, I think I come back to Doug Merritt's chop wood, carry water suggestion, which is I think it's really important for all of us to just ground a little bit and don't forget the basics, because right now, if you just try to follow the hype engine, you're going to feel very out of sorts and probably not necessarily for any big benefit of it. So, yeah.
All right. So let's see if we accomplished our goals with this episode. So first off, we wanted to inspire you all a little bit. So hopefully we did that. We also wanted to make sure that, especially those of you that are maybe between jobs or frustrated with your job, that you understand that things work out, that focusing on your health pays off. We wanted to acknowledge that there's like lots of role models out there that do amazing things. You know, we talked a little bit about our own journeys, but there's lots of our previous guests like Jess Von Bang and Ben Weber and Doug Merritt.
Maria Colacurcio, also one of these highly accomplished fitness meddling people.
Lots of inspiration, but I think the point is that you should individualize your own health journey according to what works for you.
It's important to remind yourself that self-care is building a life you don't need to take breaks from. And so integrating all of your things, but also making decisions that you feel comfortable with and proud of, and celebrating your achievements, it really matters for creating the life that you don't need to take breaks from. So we really encourage you to do that.
Yeah, and finding the support system where you can celebrate those small achievements and they're excited about those small achievements with you. And yeah, we're investing in ourselves and we want you to invest in yourself too.
And I would add one other big thing for me as I was reflecting on this. So I recently read Patty Azzarello's memoir, and she had a quote in there that I had to write down, which I don't do that too often with books. She said, "What does my work need to give me to serve my life better?" And I think this gets to that question about caring as well. Like, you shouldn't just be thinking about it as a trade-off of your work or your life. You know, we're all on this planet for a finite amount of time for which we don't really know how long that is. And I do think it's important. Anybody that has kids that are watching you, anyone who has family that you care about, anyone who is working with people that need to see you at your best and thriving, what does work need to give you to serve your life better? And how do you make those decisions and use your agency to move you in that direction so that you can have a more holistic approach, not just when you're doing sabbaticaling or have gotten to the point like Amy and I where you're doing independent, unstructured things, but even when you're in a big job, remembering that work needs to serve your life as well.
I love it. Should we invent the future?
Let's invent the future together, everyone. I believe in us.
Let's make every day count.